cardboard box arrived with straps, and the box was pretty well beaten up by FedEx. Thank goodness the grill, for the most part, is in good shape. Turned out I was missing a nut and a washer from the hinge that holds the lid on, but that'll be easy enough to replace. A couple parts had slight bends in them, and I'll debate whether I contact the seller or FedEx or if I just bend them back myself. They made the box so that it opens up nicely. I'm doing this up on a little kid's table that I happen to have in the backyard. You could do this on the ground or on a sawhorse. Taking all the parts out of the inside. Now, most of these parts are covered in grease and then wrapped in plastic wrap. I struggled getting this piece out. This is a drip tray. And it turns out the piece that was in underneath it had shifted off to the left. So once I figured that out, I was able to get everything out of there just fine. Now you tip the unit over and you have easy access to the parts where the legs are going to fit in. Now you'll notice also in the middle is the place where the little ash bin will be attached. For whatever reason, when I recorded this, I didn't bother showing it. There's a little drip can that comes with it, little bucket, and I just use that for holding all my loose parts. And it's pretty intuitive how to put these things together. Just have to line up the holes in the legs with the holes in the unit. You know, I wasn't going to record myself tightening the nuts and bolts here, but I realized that maybe not everybody understands one little trick here. They were nice enough to include a hex wrench in this that goes into the head of the bolt. But you want to make sure that you use a socket wrench or an opened end wrench on the nut, because really what you're doing is you're tightening the nut. It's possible to have this thing and feel like it's tight from just tightening the wrench. But if that nut is not tight and that nut eventually comes loose, then nothing is tight. So if you learn nothing else from this, remember, tighten your nuts. So the interior gets a quick clean out. You could use something like 409 or Fantastic. It's going to get a burn in anyway, so I figure since I just wiped off the majority of the goop, we'd be good to go. And then the shelf gets mounted to the side. Pretty straightforward. All right, so with that, everything is cleaned and ready to go. Just have to put everything back in. So here's what's going to happen. This fella burns hardwood pellets, and the pellets go into the hopper over here. And you'll notice there's a kind of a screen that keeps you from getting your hands too deep in here, keeps kids out of there. But at the bottom of that, there is an auger. And the auger is going to be carrying the pellets over into this little burning chamber. And then down at the very bottom, there's a thing called a hot rod. And when you hit this thing up and get it ready to start, it's going to heat up, and that'll heat up for about 8 minutes. And that'll get those pellets burning. Now this particular smoker is kind of cool because on the end over here, you can see there's a rod that passes through here, and there's a lock that keeps it from accidentally being operated. But I'm going to pull this lever, and I want you to see what happens inside. So come cleanup time, you pull that lever, and all your ashes fall into a little bin, a little cup that is suspended below. Inside here we have a probe that's going to give us the internal temperature of the oven, but we also have a probe that'll plug into whatever it is we're cooking. And then down here we have the brains of the system, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. Now, one of the things that I'm excited about, this particular unit has had some upgrades since I looked at it in the store the other day. One thing, they've added a little bit more rain holes for the drip tray, because this lid that's supposed to be keeping the pellets dry is going to shed water into that little drip tray, and those holes will give it some place to go. The old units had a single hole back over in this corner. Also, another concern I had was this handle that's set into the lid is potentially a point of leaking, but I noticed here that they've added some kind of sealant, silicone perhaps. But the other thing that really has me excited about this particular unit is they've added a feature that wasn't mentioned until just recently on their website, and that is they have another lever here, and what that does is that allows us to empty out the pellets that are down here in the hopper. So let's say you're cooking with a particular kind of wood and you want to switch wood. Instead of having to scoop all those pellets out, you can now just drop them out that chute. Alright, I'm about to fill this up with pellets for the first time. This bag happens to be apple pellets. Now, these are not the kind of pellets that you would heat a house with if you've ever seen those pellet fireplaces or pellet stoves. These don't have any yucky things in them like wax or other binders. But what I have to do is I have to turn this to feed, and that'll start the auger and feed the pellets over to the burner. Once we have that established, we can then set it for one of the temperature settings, and that's going to start this puppy right up. Alright, so we're going to begin with feed. Turn power on. Just kind of thinking about it. And then feed. You can hear the auger turning. Next thing that'll happen is it's going to turn on the fan. You see the auger turning there? I'll put you on a tripod to get you into the action. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and set this at 350 degrees, and that'll turn on the hot rod and get things blazing. You also notice that the fan is kicked on. That is going to blow across what will eventually be embers, and that'll keep the heat going at the temperature we want. Didn't realize when I sped this up that the sound would go away. It's interesting, when this thing is burning and set at 350, that's the rate that the pellets will be consumed. I can also smell and see a little bit of heat coming up. That's probably, again, just some of the smoke from the packing material. I don't think any pellets are close enough to that hot rod to burn yet. Let's just fast forward through a couple minutes of smoldering and smoking. Let's get you a little bit closer. we have full-on ignition now. Now we got flames. So it's time to put the balance of the parts in here that need to warm up. The first thing that I just kicked is a heat diverter. And it's got a little parking place right there. Locks in place. Next is a drip tray. Goes in like so. Put our top rack in here. And our enameled bottom rack. Now that drip tray is not sitting like it should. I might have that upside down. No, I'm going to put it right there for now, just for our burn in, and I'll check the instructions. We are ready to close the lid on this guy and let her go to town for half an hour. We'll start things off that it's the next day. Had a sudden rain, so thank goodness the free cover came in handy. Some of the pellets in the bag got wet. So those are now worthless. At least the ones that got wet. Turned into sawdust. Rust started already. Took about 30 seconds of looking at the instructions to see that I put that in backwards. Just couldn't see how if the left side is supposed to be higher to allow it to drip, why the longer side would go on the right. But there is a lip on the right. That supports it. That's it. So I'm going to go wipe that down, apply a little cooking oil, and then I have some aluminum foil. So from here we can open the bottom, let that drop into the bin below. There we go. Look at that. So there was enough water through this thing before I was able to get the cover on it that our ashtray is filled with water. That's lovely. So we'll dump that out. that up with some canola oil. Start it up. Got it set for 350. And you can see because that auger's full, it's already starting to dump pellets. So let's speed this up again. You know, it actually lights up fairly quickly. Takes about, let's say, 6 minutes to light up. But I noticed on film, 6 minutes is a lot of time. So there you go. I think that experiment's over. I've enjoyed as much of this as I can stand. So those were on the left. There you can see left to right, nice and toasty, all getting relatively dried out. Looks like, yeah, just dry. Wipe that clean. Give that another quick spray. Alright, so it's been about 15 minutes. Smells good. Look at that. That's not too shabby. So just as before, it looks like our left-hand side is cooked well. That looks good. Let's go to the right. Actually, the right-hand side looks perfect. So we're done with biscuits. We haven't cooked any meat yet, so it seems like the perfect time to throw some bacon on. At this point, I'm just dealing out the bacon. I believe I actually clipped the point where I lifted the lid and flipped all these pieces over, so we'll just get right to the action on this. Let's get a picture for our buddies over on Instagram. I mean, finally, some truly applewood smoked bacon. So our last test for the day, we're going to throw some chicken wings on here. Again, add a little more fat seasoning to the interior of the grill. Get her ready for some real smoking. So with that, we're going to take it on down to 275. Take this inside. Maybe put it together with some biscuits I know about. Alright, up next we're going to cook our first actual meat. Well, I guess bacon's meat, but we're going to throw some chicken wings on there. And this is not a cooking lesson by any means. All I've done is taken some whole wings and marinated them in some Italian dressing. We'll add a little bit of salt and pepper here as they go along. But for just the first batch of meat, that's the way it's going to be. 275 now. Let me wipe this down, give it a quick spray. Yeah, it's mostly just bacon and grease anyway. We're going to cook for an hour and a half, an hour and 45, something like that. So to use the internal thermometer, which came with the unit, plug the probe in here, pass it through the little port right here, and then let's stick that into the meaty portion of one of the thicker pieces. Try not to hit the bone like I just did. There we go. And we're going to switch to the probe. So the probe is currently reading 165, 67, 68, 170. 174. We got plenty of heat going here. 176. So we're done. No reason to play. It's time to eat. Turn the probe off. Done. There's my sacrificial wing. Everything smells great. Internal temperature looks good. Okay, for shutdown now, what we're going to do is we're just going to simply press the shutdown button. So let me take you off the tripod. And turn the dial to shutdown. And that's it. It'll burn off the excess pellets, and when it's done, it'll shut itself off. Neat little grill. Well done, Camp Chef.